Okay, good morning from St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm Artstarzz, and this is Open Mic. This morning, I want to talk a little bit about the Democrats. Democrats are kicking butt, and slowly but surely they're coming together. Got Elizabeth Warren jumping in there, who I'm surprised because she wasn't too happy about the TPP, and her and Bernie Sanders were sticking tight on that. They were mad at President Obama and anybody who was voting for the TPP. But I think the TPP is going to go in. I see that Hillary Clinton kind of like said, okay, I'm against the TPP until I get elected, and then I'm going to be for it. Because she was basically siding with President Obama, and she said she would. And she did. And maybe her and President Obama got together and says, hey, listen, during the elections, just go ahead and be against it. But we got to have this thing, and we've got to trade with the world, and like it or not, we're going to trade with the world, and the TPP apparently is a way to do it, to lock everybody in to the same page, to have the same ideas how we're going to trade and what you can and can't do and who you can sue and who you can't sue. A lot of people, the anarchists, are totally against it because, of course, they're totally against the government. But, we've got some people in the chats. I've only got 2 chats on our site now, so I don't know what the other chats are doing. I don't even go sneaky peek like I used to. So I've got Tokyo One's site channel, and I've got Artstarzz channel on our site. So that limits our chats. But what I did do, and let me get us over there, is I added more Twitter. I think it's Twitter, yeah. I added more Twitter, and I took off the live stream channels because they were pretty much dead. This one channel right now, We Are Dissidents, has been spinning. Let me adjust this thing and show you. Has been spinning for about 10 minutes. This is Tokyo One's channel, and let me zoom in just on the chat and show you. It's been spinning for about 10 minutes, and I'll go ahead and refresh the page. For all I know, that sometimes when that happens, that channel has been closed. And a lot of times what happens is people go into live stream and complain and complain and complain until they close the channel. And then what happens is that, that person just opens up the channel again in another name. They just get a different email and they open the channel. So it's really a waste of time because whoever gets the channel shut, and a lot of times it is somebody like Susie Q2, they've got time just like we do, and they can go to live stream and complain and complain and complain. Ping pretty much told people the best way to contact live stream is to go to their sales department. And then you complain to the sales department, and then they get you to the right department that you can get to. If you just try to complain, it doesn't work that well. But as you can see, Tokyo One's chat, unless, and I doubt it, but it's possible, unless I got banned and I can't get in.
It's open.
It's open?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, is the little wheel just spinning?
Oh. This must be.
Nina's.
Yep, everything's open.
Yep, it's okay. So it's just my site that's having some trouble. I did add some spell checkers, and that could be confusing my site. But anyway, let's go to something that's not spinning, which is Twitter. I've added Twitter to my site, and I replaced about 7 channels that either we were banned from, Nina and I were banned from, or they just weren't active. Nothing was going on. So I replaced them with, I'm replacing them slowly but surely with Twitter channels. And right now what I have is Elizabeth Warren. You're looking at Elizabeth Warren. And let me make this a little bit bigger because it's always easier to read when it's bigger. Like this, go like this. And make it just a little bit bigger like that. And do some adjusting here and there. And then we can see, I'll show the firing Elizabeth Warren, as you can see right there. If you didn't catch any of this during the week when it was happening live, you can come to the Twitter channels, and I have Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, I believe I have President Obama. I might even have Michelle Obama on here. I'm going to check a little bit, and I took Donald Trump off. And then after thinking about it, I put him back on so, you could really see how stupid this man is. And, you don't have to be smart to be rich. And Donald Trump is proving that every day. But let me just play a little bit of Elizabeth Warren, because she has been so fiery lately that she deserves a replay. So let's see. Okay. Here we go.
Four simple words are engraved above the doors to the United States Supreme Court: equal justice under law. That's supposed to be the basic promise of our legal system, that our laws are just and that everyone will be held equally accountable if they break those laws. Now, look, we haven't always fulfilled those promises, but it is the absolute standard to which we hold ourselves, even when we fall short. And a vital part of that struggle is the fight for a truly professional, independent, and impartial judiciary. Absolutely. A place that is governed not by politics, not by money, not by power, but by those four simple words: equal justice under law. Yes. Now, 3 years ago, I came here to deliver a warning about how that promise is under threat. And I talked pretty bluntly about how we are losing the fight over whether our courts will remain a neutral forum, faithfully interpreting law and dispensing fair and impartial justice, or whether the rich and powerful interests will completely capture the judicial branch. I talked about how year after year, for more than 30 years now, powerful interests have worked to rewrite the law and tilt the courts to favor billionaires and giant corporations. We talked about cases that protect giant businesses from accountability, cases that made it harder for individuals to get into court, cases that gutted long-standing protections for consumers to keep them from being cheated, and cases like Citizens United, which unleashed an avalanche of billionaire super PAC dollars and secret corporate money in a mad dash to tilt the rest of government in favor of the wealthy. And today, I am here to update that warning. Because what we've seen over the past 3 years, accelerating over the past 3 months and even the last 3 weeks, is alarming. Powerful interests are now launching a full-scale assault on the integrity of the federal judiciary and its judges. Now, this assault has two major elements. First, tearing down our centuries-old process for appointing judges. And second, viciously attacking judicial nominees, potential nominees, and even sitting federal judges at the first sign that they might put the rule of law above devotion to the rich and powerful. Now, earlier this week, I released a comprehensive report on the Republican campaign of obstruction obstruction against President Obama's nominees. It details how Senate Republicans have delayed or blocked votes on key nominations throughout the entire Obama presidency. The purpose of this obstruction is to try to hold open federal positions for as long as possible. The purpose is also to hamstring the president's ability to protect consumers and workers, to hold large corporations accountable, to promote equality. In other words, to undermine the fundamental principle of equal justice under law. The centerpiece of that strategy has been a blockade of federal judicial appointments, and it is much bigger than just the United States Supreme Court. From the day President Obama was sworn in, Senate Republicans have used every procedural tool at their disposal to try to slow down his nominees. They spent months abusing the filibuster in a naked effort to preserve a right-wing majority on the D.C. circuit. And after capturing the Senate in 2015, they've just slowed judicial confirmations down to a trickle. Judicial emergencies multiply, cases pile up, courts are starved for help. And now the Supreme Court of the United States sits paralyzed, unable to deal with its most challenging cases, all because extremist Republicans who reject the legitimacy of President Obama are determined to make certain our courts advance the agenda only of the wealthy and the powerful. It is outrageous, and it is up to us to fight back. Senate Republicans, do your job. Give district court nominees their votes. Do your job. Give circuit court nominees their votes. And do your job. Give Merrick Garland his vote. That's right. The nominations blockade is just the first part of the assault on the judiciary. But there is a second, even uglier line.
And that's just a little bit of Elizabeth Warren. You can come to our website, or else you can go to her Twitter and listen to the rest of that. It's probably one of the best speeches I've ever heard, aside of some of the ones that President Obama gave, of course. But she can give a good speech. That she's on fire, and she's mad, and she has been mad for quite some time, because she came in fighting. That's how she got to be a senator, just fighting. But there's a lot to fight about, and she's running it all down. So, if you don't know anything about the Democrats and you want to learn something about the Democrats, go to Elizabeth Warren's Twitter channel. She'll straighten you out. As you could see, she talks for maybe a half hour or so, and you can go in then and see what she's got to say. So we'll move up to Bernie Sanders and see, is this guy ever gonna quit? Is he ever gonna say, I lost this? But no, he wants to take it all the way to the convention, and it doesn't matter who he talks to. He's going to take it to the convention. And unfortunately, when you're running for something like President of the United States, a lot of people, are going to dig up dirt. I know Nina and I have, we didn't lie. It's just some of the things that Bernie Sanders has done in his past, they aren't so good. And along with his wife, some of the things they've done aren't so good. But, everybody seems to think that we need Bernie Sanders and we need his followers. Personally, the followers that have sense, yeah, we'll take them. But we definitely don't want the Bernie bots or the Bernie bros or the Bernie bitches. We don't want them. I know I don't want them. I'm not speaking for everybody, but I'm speaking for myself. I don't want them. And if we lose votes, we lose votes. I don't think there's enough of them kind of people, and I personally just think they're anarchists, and they're using Bernie to get to where they're going. The same people that were in Occupy Wall Street are going with Bernie, and Bernie said it a couple of times. But I didn't want Occupy Wall Street. What was left of Occupy Wall Street, it's kind of like a lake. As long as the lake is full, the water is clean, it's real nice, you could swim in it. But when the lake starts to evaporate and you get closer to the bottom where the mud and the muck and the filth is, well, that's what was left on Occupy Wall Street. There were some good people in Occupy Wall Street that had good intentions. Their goal was to basically to change the government without actually joining the government, which, in my opinion, is impossible. If you want to change the government, you've got to join it and change it from within. That's what Bernie Sanders is trying to do. That's what Bernie Sanders has always tried to do. And of course, you get a little perk here and there. You get somebody slipping you $1 million or $100,000. And, he wants to complain about, Hillary making money in a speech. He wants to see the speech. Well, everybody in that room paid something to hear that speech. If Bernie wants to hear that speech, I'm sure that if he had $150,000 or whatever, Hillary would take his $150,000, sit him down, and give him a speech. But, I don't think Hillary is talking to these people and saying something different. That's what he's implying. He's implying, or was implying, like the Republicans, that there's two Hillarys, the one we know and the one we don't know. And apparently in their minds, the one we don't know, like Donald Trump says, is crooked Hillary. And I think that's a bunch of bullshit. Hillary has been fighting on the side of the Democrats ever since she was a young girl. I mean, to say that now that she's older, that she's going to change her mind suddenly, and now she's, this evil person that's trying to become president of the United States to give corporations more than they already have. Who in their right mind would want to give corporations more than they already have? Donald Trump, who would like to give the corporations more than they already have. I mean, how much more can you give them before the country becomes so unbalanced that it becomes more dysfunctional than it already is? They talk about the 1% of the 1% owning 49% of the United States of America. So what do you want to give them? 60%? 70%? 80%? This country will not function with them kind of numbers. It's barely functioning on 49%. And the people are mad. And they're blaming it on Wall Street. I personally don't blame Wall Street for anything. Number one, if you have a small company and you want to grow, you have to go to Wall Street. You can go to the government, but you're not going to grow like you would if you went to Wall Street. Wall Street is just a bunch of people obviously trying to make money. And like any other organization or group, they're going to be liars and cheaters and thieves. We have them in the government. We have them in the school system. We have them everywhere. From city government to federal government, we have them. There's always going to be people trying to take. And they're going to figure out a way to do it. But to take down all of Wall Street, in my opinion, that's ridiculous. That's just plain nuts. Because a lot of people depend on their dividends that they get, that they invested in. Their money, they invested in it. If you don't like Wall Street, that's one thing. But, before you start trying to take it down, you've really got to think it through. There's a lot of old people, young people, that depend on them dividends. And it's up to the owners who run the companies to make sure that the stock is it stays up. So if you want to bitch, you've got to go to individual corporations and see exactly how they're cheating the American public. Because, if the prices go up on something, don't buy it. Because when the prices go up, they're trying to increase the value of the stock. At least that's the way I understand it. They're trying to increase the value of the stock. So don't buy. Don't go to Walmart. Don't go to Kmart. Don't buy a car. Don't use oil. Don't use gas. Don't use the things that the stock market depends on. If you don't want somebody to have a golden parachute, don't use that bank. But you're not going to get the whole country to sacrifice for you because you've been wronged and you're miserable. You have to get in there yourself and straighten it out. You've got to figure out a way to make more money. Not try to make people have less money so they'll be even with you. That's ridiculous. Somebody is doing better. You got to find out how they did it and do it yourself. And then, if you want to help the poor, take your own money and do it. But I've never thought it was right to take money from the rich and give to the poor. I never thought that was right. If the rich people got the money illegally, it's up to the court system. Make the court system aware of what that company did, like Donald Trump. They're already showing how Donald Trump has made a lot of money by not paying people. That in itself is an art. Hire people to do work that you're going to profit on, and then don't even pay them. Have somebody build one of them great big buildings for you and not pay them. You can make a lot of money that way, and a lot of people do that. But that's not Wall Street's fault. Donald Trump is not Wall Street's fault. Donald Trump is Donald Trump's fault. And there are a lot of Donald Trumps in the country. He's just happening to be running for president, and people are just ripping him open and looking at every part of his life, every minute of his life. Every minute of his kids' life, his grandkids, his wife, every wife he's ever had, his mother, his father, his brothers, his sisters. That's what happens when you run for president. They tear your family apart and they just take a little peek to see if you've managed to hide any money with them. Because that's not legal. You can't hide money. And you've got to pay taxes. And Donald Trump is proud that he doesn't pay taxes. But he makes billions of dollars cheating people, and that's okay. And Bernie Sanders is in there fighting against that, whether you like him or not. And whether you like him or not, he's going to have to join Hillary. And some of his crazy people are going to have to come with him. And they are, some of them, they're crazy. They're former Occupy Wall Street people. They're anarchists, communists. And that's not a lie. That's not stretching the truth one bit. Socialists, whatever they are, I don't know what it is. I think a socialist is somebody who wants to share everything, make everybody equal. Because they say that, Social Security, the first name is social. Socialists, we're socialists when we use Social Security because we're using other people's money. And there's no way around it. It's kind of a Ponzi scheme that happens to work. Not all Ponzi schemes work. Social Security is one that works. You'll collect more than you pay in. That's a Ponzi scheme. But it works because it was built in such a way that when the young people come in, when I was young, Nina was young, all of our families, all of your families, if you're an American, were young, you paid into it. But you weren't collecting it. Old people were collecting it. Okay, well now it's our turn. And the young people who are becoming less and less, it's becoming a problem. So they have to put in more, but they make more. The government tries really hard to balance that so that you make more money so you can pay more money so the old people today can get a check. A check that they could survive on, and not all checks, you're able to survive on. But it's better than nothing. And then you get a little help from the state. Some cases like Denver, you get help from the state and you get help from the city. Denver was a place, it's a city and county, it's mixed. St. Petersburg is just a city, then it has a county. And they don't help like they do in Denver. But that's okay. But it's not okay for people trying to survive here. Them kind of people can't survive here, that are just trying to live on their Social Security but didn't make enough money throughout their life. There isn't another safety net for them like it is in Denver, because apparently Florida's got it set up that way because there's a lot of rich people here that don't want poor people here. They don't want you here if you're poor. So they set it up that way. But if you're poor and you can't survive, go to Denver, because Denver looks at it a little bit different. And Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and President Obama and Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, these are just the big names that are out there, are trying to make the whole country kind of even. That would make it, in a way, a socialist country. But then you mix in a little capitalist so that the rich can continue to get rich or stay rich. But they're going to have to kick back some of that money because, the government, although it prints the money, basically it doesn't make money. And that's the thing. Taxes are how the government makes money. Profits are how private corporations make money. So, the government has to balance it in such a way that they tax corporations and the mega rich in such a way that it can keep the government running and it can keep the social programs intact. Poor doesn't mean that you're lazy and you don't have a job. Poor means that maybe you have 2 jobs or 3 jobs, and each one of them jobs don't pay very much. $7.50 an hour is not very much. It's ridiculous to try to live on $7.50 an hour. 15, the only ones that are complaining about it are the Donald Trumps. They're the only ones that are complaining about the $15 an hour that Bernie Sanders wants to get. But Hillary Clinton thinks that possibly we should start at $12 an hour. Because if you can't get the 15, that means that you didn't get anything. You could say you want 15 an hour, and the government, federal government, can make the subcontractors pay their workers 15 an hour. You can do it that way, but that's not all the country. Hillary Clinton is saying, okay, let's go up to $12 an hour instead of $7.50. But the problem with that is that you're going to get $7.50 an hour, and then $12 or $15 an hour, and then what's going to happen is that then the prices go up. And that's, now you're making $15 an hour, you can afford to pay more for gas, you can afford to pay more for, hamburger and beef and fish and bread. You can afford to pay more. But then you're right back to $7.50 an hour. You're just carrying more money. So they've got to figure out a way to balance this. And that's what a lot of people who bitch don't understand, the balancing of it. How do you balance it? Yeah, okay, now the guy's making $15 an hour, but a loaf of bread costs $5 an hour, for example. So you really didn't pull ahead. Now you've just got to deal with more money. They've got to figure out a way to get the $15 an hour and then keep the prices down, because people on fixed income, well, they're not going to get that kind of a raise. So now, who's suffering for this $15 an hour? Because you walk into the store and they don't say, oh, okay, you look old, so we're going to give you, the loaf of bread cheaper. They don't do that. A loaf of bread costs what a loaf of bread costs, and everybody pays that price. But not everybody gets the raise. So it's a pretty good balancing act that has to be done. You can't just run around saying, everybody's going to get $15 an hour, because they're already saying that Social Security is straining, and then they're going to make it so that the $15 an hour balances out on the Social Security check. They're going to say, okay, well, if you work 40 hours a week or whatever, however they figure out our checks, it should equal $15 an hour, so that by the end of the month, we're making what somebody is making who makes $15 an hour gets paid a month. So you just can't run around saying, okay, well, everybody's going to get $15 an hour at least. And then when you do that, when you give him $15 an hour, the guy who's above him, or the guy who went to school, for example, to learn to fix cars, you go to school for that now. And you learn how to work on these new cars, all the electronics and whatnot, and they're already making the $15 an hour. So the guy at McDonald's flipping hamburger is making $15 an hour, but the guy who has to pay to go to school to learn how to fix cars, for example, is making $15. So what do you do with him? You've got to bump his wages up almost double, because $15 an hour is double of what minimum wage is. So now that you got to pay that guy $15. You used to pay him $15. Now you got to pay him $30 an hour, which $30 an hour isn't like it's a weird wage. There are people out there who work and making $30 and $40 an hour. In some of these trade unions, they're making that already. So what are you going to do with them? It's just not, let's just raise the rate. I mean, it's just not going to be the McDonald workers and the people who clean hotels. It's a big problem just to raise that to $15 an hour. You got to start by making sure that nobody raises the price. Then when you do that, you've got to go out to the trade unions and say, okay, go ahead and double your wages. And yeah, that will take from the rich and give it to the poor, or the less, the people who are making less money. You'll take from the rich that way. And then you've got to go ahead and raise the taxes on the rich. That's why they're bitching so much. They're saying, okay, you're raising labor costs. That's already going to cost us billions of dollars throughout the whole industries. It's going to cost billions of dollars. And then you're going to raise our taxes, and that's going to cost us billions of dollars. And that's why they're mad. That's why they're mad. They're saying they don't want to pay for everything. They don't want to pay for this and that, but they can afford to pay billions more. They own 49% of the country. Maybe we need to kick them back to 30%. They only now own 30% of the country. And that's how you would do it. That's how you would attack them. And they're saying no. Maybe, we'll pay 38% taxes. There was a time when they paid 95%. They were making so much money that the government was able to tax them in the 90s. And they still were rich. Just keeping 10% of the profits, they were rich. And then over the years, they said, you know what, maybe 75. Let's get it to 75. They were happy with paying 75% in taxes. And they were still rich. Because you got to figure, these are just people. 1% of 1% are just people now. These aren't the corporations. These are just rich families like the Rockefellers and people like that. It's just the rich families that own 49% of the country because they bought it up. They invested in the country. That's why. And that's what the little guy has to do too. You ask somebody today, if they're 18, 19 years old, if they're going to buy a house. Oh, I can't afford it. I can't afford to buy a house on the money I make. There's land somewhere in this country, if you go looking, that you can buy some of it. There's places where you can go that are depressed. That are depressed like Detroit, for example. They're depressed. And you can go there and buy some of that property, help the economy, and own some land. You don't want to live in the ghettos of Detroit? Well, too bad. That's the way it is. A lot of people went and moved to the ghettos, and they rebuilt the ghettos. They rebuilt the ghettos, and you go back there now and you could never tell that they were a ghetto. That happened in North Denver when I lived in Colorado. I seen it happen a couple of times. This thing just quit.
Well, this thing was working bad.
Huh?
The rooms were shut down. Everything was shut down. And then it came back on.
Well, I had a little blurb there. The computer just kind of went quiet. I think it'll do that if nothing is moving. But if this is still recording, I'll find out. I'm gonna keep on going where I was at. But if you go into places, a few years back, I was talking about Detroit. Detroit was really, that's when they went into emergency management, and the governor took over, and then he appointed somebody to run Detroit City. But they would show all of these houses that were falling down, and you could go in there and you could buy that. Donald Trump said it, and everybody got all bent out. Donald Trump wants the country to go bad so he can make money. That isn't what he was saying. I don't like Donald Trump, but I've been saying what he said a long time ago, so I must be as evil as Donald Trump. When things go bad, get in there and buy some of that land. That's the opportunity for the young. Unfortunately, the people who lived there couldn't manage it for whatever reason. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying this is what happened. These people were pushed out of their homes one way or another. Either, when the jobs leave, they didn't leave and they tried to survive, and you can't survive sometimes, and your house starts to fall down. And by the time you leave, it's just a dilapidated building, and then people go in there, the junkies and whatnot, and destroy it. Well, in Denver, of course, we weren't that bad. But whenever Denver was having a recession, people would come into Denver and start buying it up. Start buying it up and building and repairing these houses that were in bad shape. I lived right through it, and I know that it can be done. So if you're young and you're saying there's nothing, you can't buy a house because you don't make enough money, that's bullshit. You can save $1,000 one way or another, not buy you a couple of beers for a while, not buy you some of that fancy coffee. Don't buy no video games. Don't do any of that shit that's eating up your $1,000 until you've bought some land. And then once you have the land in your greedy little hand and you own the land, then just wait. Just wait until everything continues to grow in your life, and then either sell the land for a profit and then go buy you a little house, maybe a one-bedroom house in another depressed area. There's more than one way to make money. Donald Trump isn't insane. He's just crazy. And if you listen to the good things he says, good things you can put it to use. He didn't cause the bubble. He just says he's going to make money on the bubble whenever it happens. But he wasn't the only one. Poor people were doing it too. They were moving all over the country, trying to bounce off of what they owned. Every time they would buy something, they would sell it, make a little bit of money on it, take that money and move to another depressed area, invest, and then when your money grew, because nothing in America is going to stay dead forever. Nothing. No place in America will stay dead forever. I had some land in the San Luis Valley, in the worst place that you could buy land. That's the first place I bought land when I was a kid, because that's all I could afford. They let me pay $52 a month for 2 acres until I paid it off. Now, you can still do that. Banks will lend you money on land that is, that's depressed. Or save $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 or $5,000. Save it. You don't have to save $150,000 or $200,000 or $500,000 to get property. Start out slow. Because, if you hang in there, you're going to get old if you're lucky. And by the time you get to a certain point in your life, you're going to have that land. And it's going to be worth some bucks. You could buy some land, in Detroit today for $1,000 possibly. I know you used to be able to, because we were checking it out. You could buy a lot, for $1,000. Now, in Denver, if you owned a lot with nothing on it, it's worth $100,000. And the infrastructure is there. And what I mean by that is your sewerage is there, lines going into the sewer. That didn't get ruined with the recession. That didn't get ruined by the junkies who destroyed these houses. That's still there. And your electricity coming to the house, it's still there. The infrastructure is still there. So that property is very, very valuable. And it's selling cheap. And the Donald Trumps of the world are going in and buying it. Can you imagine having $10 billion like he says? He could have went in and bought everything in Detroit, and he probably did. But kids could do that. This is nonsense where I can't afford to buy is just plain bullshit. And just bullshitting yourself if you don't get out there and buy some of that land. So Bernie Sanders, he wants you to do well. He wants colleges to be free. He wants you to make $15 an hour. But like I said, it's not that simple. Because there's after effects. Like I said, you could make $15 an hour at McDonald's, and that's cool. But what about the managers? The stockholders aren't going to like that. And what do? They start selling their stock. And then the value of the stock goes down. And when the value of the stock goes down, then the company starts having problems. They aren't just threatening people when they say, we're going to have to start closing our businesses if we do these sort of things. They're not just threatening. That actually can happen as the value of their stock drops. They keep selling it till it's not worth anything anymore. Everybody keeps taking a bite out of it and then selling it. Till it finally gets to a place where there's not even a bite left. And that's why these companies bounce around, moving from different places. That's why they do it. They want to continue to line their pockets, but in America, it's getting harder and harder and harder. But if they had a good product, that product can be, they can leave, but then you could start a business. You can start all these little businesses. Say, for example, Walmart left the United States, which, part of it has. That's why they get all the tax breaks. That's why everybody's mad. But let's just say all of Walmart left the United States. They didn't build stores in Walmart anymore. Well, there's a lot of little places in Colorado that I remember that they didn't want Walmart there because it was going to affect their businesses. All the little Ace Hardwares and whatnot. All the little mom and pop things, the little hardware stores that used to be there. Well, as soon as Walmart moved in, they couldn't make any money, so they crashed. But if Walmart moves out, then all these little companies can move back in. So it's not so bad that these companies leave. All of the people that work for Walmart know the industry. They can start a little store. A lot of people do that. So $15 an hour has a ripple effect. And it goes in the strangest places that you couldn't even imagine. That the problem is the $15 an hour wage. That's why Donald Trump says, no. Because he knows how much it's going to affect him and his rich friends. On top of paying more taxes, they'll still remain very, very rich, but, they want to decide what they give away. They don't want it decided for them, and that's what they're pissed off about. If you could take this to them in such a way and sell it to them, how it's good for them, but it's not going to be good for them. There's no way to sell, that, okay, we're going to take a bunch of money away from you, and, you're going to be happy about that. It's hard to sell that. And that's what's going to happen. Between the tax increases and the wage increases, that'll start taking a big bite out of the stockholders. And they're not going to be happy about it. So they're not happy with Bernie Sanders. They're not happy with Elizabeth Warren. They're not happy with President Obama or the future President Clinton. They're not going to be happy with him. And to add another thing is that the oil prices are dropping. And as the oil prices drop, places like Venezuela, of which some people in the chats, are talking about, places like Venezuela and Mexico and other places that depended on oil, even ISIS. I always thought it was funny because I said, here ISIS was fighting for all that oil and then the prices drop. You didn't even have to go in and fire a shot. Just change the prices of oil. And they did. And ISIS started to suffer. Because they couldn't sell their oil on the black market because they were already selling it on the black market cheaper. They were going to the black market and selling the oil maybe half price. But if the oil drops in the regular market to half price, that means that ISIS has to sell its oil for just 25% of the value. So ISIS ain't happy about that. And a lot of countries aren't happy about that. But something has to be done. Something has to happen, and we have to change things and go to solar. ISIS is going to have to go out and start stealing solar panels or something, wind turbines. They're going to have to go out and attack the wind turbines and the solar panels because the oil isn't worth what it used to be. And they're predicting it's not going to be worth anything for a long time. Number one, the United States isn't buying like it used to, and it used to buy up 25% of the world's oil. That's pretty big. That's pretty big for just one country. And then next was China, and China's starting to buy up whatever they can because they're still depending on oil, but China's starting to move more and more to solar and wind because they see. It's not really hard to see the future. When everybody's stopping, poking holes in the earth and digging up coal. They're getting rid of coal. But they've got to replace it because they got to figure out a way to stop using coal, stop using oil, and at the same time putting all these workers back to work. And that's what Hillary Clinton was saying when she went to the coal parts of the country and says these jobs are out of here. She didn't mean it to be mean. She just meant we can no longer survive by putting this shit in the air and causing global warming. We can't do that anymore. And taxing the hell out of these companies, they make so much money they can afford the tax increase. But we can't afford to have the air polluted in such a way that it's causing global warming. Coal and oil is doing that. So we got to switch over to, which everybody knows, it's no secret, solar and wind. And there's other things. They've already found all kinds of things. It's just crazy, some of the new stuff they found to create energy. And some of it is just so cool. You know, they're turning water into energy somehow. Plants. They're growing plants that can produce energy. It's just crazy what they're trying to do. It's exciting, not crazy, what they're trying to do, and that we're living through a time when we move from coal and oil to solar and wind and all these cool little ways to make electricity. They've got cars. They've got cars running on water. But, you know, there you go. You're starting a new problem. Because just like fracking is using up millions and millions and millions of gallons of water, fresh drinking water, which I never could understand. Why don't see when they frack, they've got to do something with that water that they've dirtied, and what they're doing is they're sending it back into the ground, into the cracks, and the cracks are causing earthquakes. There's always something. I'm just curious to see what's going to happen when we're running on solar and the sun starts to heat the planet that way. You know, the sun hits that solar panel, creates energy, but it also creates heat. So is that going to create more global warming? What about the wind? The wind is running down a valley, has been running down the valley for the beginning of time, and now you're going to stop it with wind turbines. How's that going to affect the planet? It seems like everything we do has some kind of backlash. There's some kind of backlash. Always, everything we do has some kind. They never expected oil and coal to block out sunlight or to cause cancer. They never expected that when they used it. They were just all happy that they didn't have to ride a horse anymore.
It's 11 o'clock.
And it's 11 o'clock. They were just all happy with the progress. Them trains just spilling out that black smoke, but, you know, it was taking them down the road. They were all happy about that. You know, and then they invented the cars, and it polluted the hell out of the air, and planes, airplanes. They're just happy to fly. They were happy just to drive their cars, not even realizing what it was going to do to the planet. As we went from, you know, a few thousand people having a car, a few hundred people having a car, to billions of people having a car and polluting the air and causing global warming. Everything has an effect, cause and effect. Everything does. And the secret has always been is to try to figure out what the effect will be before you actually do it. And that's pretty hard to do when you take something as simple as solar and wind. But one day I was watching one of those history channels or one of those, you know, we know what's going on channel. And I seen all of them solar panels and I'm thinking to myself, that's got to be kicking out heat. It's got to be kicking out heat. So now they're going to have to figure out how to harness the heat and reuse it or build solar panels that don't create heat. But I mean, they had thousands of these things, you know. But then again, the sun bounces off the oceans and has been, but now we're adding to that. We're adding to it. We're going to affect the balance of the planet. It doesn't matter what humans do. We affect the balance of nature and the balance of the planet. We always do. We always have. And then we figure out, okay, now we can't use solar, and now we're going to have protesters. No solar, no solar, no wind, no wind. We're going to have protesters doing that. You know, they thought nuclear was the way to go. That doesn't pollute. Let's use nuclear. Okay, then they found out it does pollute. What are you doing with all that waste? Well, look, we'll put it in barrels and we'll put it in a cave and let it sit there for 100,000 years. Instead of trying to figure out a way to recycle it. Anytime you do something, you're going to have to figure out a way to recycle it, including solar and wind. How to recycle is really the trick, I would think. You know, but I'm about out of time. It's funny how I can just blab and blab and blab and blab. And then I start to run out of time. And, that's a good thing, I guess. So I'm Artstarzz. That's my time. Have a good day.
All my friends know the low rider. The low rider is a little higher.